Hello everybody and welcome back to part 2 of comparing and ordering rational numbers. Before we get into ordering rational numbers, we do have one more problem to do that's technically a comparing problem, but I wanted to save this one because it's going to help us with the ordering. So let's take a look here. Again, this is still in your notes page that you should have loaded at example 3. It says, in Mr. Huang's class, 20% of students own roller shoes. In Mrs. Trevino's class, 5 out of 29 students own roller shoes. In which class does a greater fraction of students own roller shoes? All right, so what we're going to need to do here, let's make it a little bigger. The easiest way to compare numbers when you have maybe a combination of percents, fractions, and decimals, the easiest way that I think is to write all of the numbers as a decimal, and then once the numbers are written as a decimal, it's going to be much easier to compare. So as you can see, the first problem here, it says, let's grab this. Okay, 20%. You guys all know to convert a percent to a decimal, you're going to move the decimal point 2 spaces to the left. So when we do that, the decimal point would be here, 1, 2, and we would get 0.2. Okay? Now, to convert a fraction to a decimal, remember a fraction means to divide. So we would do 5 divided by 29. And when you do that, you would get 0.1724. Okay, which you can see here. Okay, or you get approximately that. So now what you would have to do is to compare these two decimals. Remember, when we compare decimals, you need to line up the decimal points and compare from left to right. So I'm just going to write it vertically so it's easier to see. We have 0.2, 0.17. Of course, we could add a 0 here if we wanted. And then because we're comparing from left to right, you can see right away in the tenths place that 2 is bigger than 1. So 20% would be bigger than 5/29. Okay? So that means that the class with the 20% right here, which would be Mr. Huang's class, would have a higher percentage of roller shoes. Okay, the next part here is the got it. And it says to make sure that you understand this, do this problem to find out. So I would like you to please pause the video now and try to answer this question. When you're done, come on back and we will look at it together. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you got the answer of 5th period. Okay, and here's how we got it. In a second period class, 37.5% of students like to bowl. In a 5th period class, 12 out of 29 students like to bowl. Which class does a greater fraction of students like to bowl? Okay, so we would start off with the 37.5%. Written as a decimal, that would be 2 to the left, so we would get 0.375. Okay, and then 12 out of 29, remember that is a division problem. When I divided that, I got 0.4137, and it went on further than that. Comparing from left to right, starting in the tenths place, we can see that 4 is bigger than 3. So 12/29 would be larger than 37.5%. Okay, it would be about 41% of students in the 5th period class. So to answer the question, we would say that the 5th period class has a greater fraction of students who like to bowl. Okay, next we're going to move on to ordering rational numbers. This is going to be very similar to what we just did, except we're going to have more than 2 numbers to work with. So we are going to need to write every number that we're given as a decimal, and then we can put the decimal numbers in order from least to greatest, or possibly greatest to least, depending on the question. Let's jump into the first example. It says, order the set 3 44/100, pi, 3 14/100, and 3.4 repeating from least to greatest. So again, what we are going to do is write all of these as decimals, which isn't too bad since most of these are written as decimals already. I'm going to use the space over to the right. So again, we have 3.44. Remember, if needed, we can always add a 0 at the end of the decimal. That doesn't change the value. The next number we have is pi. If you remember in part 1, there was a question about looking pi up on the internet. So the way we approximate pi, it's going to be 3.14159, and then it goes on even further than that. But for now, let's see if that's enough digits of pi to be able to compare. Okay, the next is 3.14. Again, we can add a 0 at the end without changing the value, and it looks like we might need that. And then 3.4 repeating is going to be, of course, like this, and the 4 would go on forever. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is now that the decimal points are lined up, we're going to compare from left to right. So if we look right here, the digit in the ones place is not very helpful because it is 3 for all of the numbers. So then we're going to move on to the tenths place. The smallest number that we see here, let me grab here, would be a 1. Okay, and both of these numbers have a 1 right there. Okay, so then we have to go to the next place, to the hundredths place. There we have 4s. Again, not very helpful. So now, this is why it's helpful to add the 0 if we need it. In the thousandths place, that's where we start to see a difference. Okay, so let me go back, grab this. And so the number that is the smallest is going to be 3.140, or the number given in the problem was just 3.14. That's going to be the smallest. And again, this is asking us to order it from least to greatest. So that's the number we need to start with, is the smallest, 3.14. Let's cross it off so we know that we used it. We can cross it off here as well. Then 3.141, that is going to be pi, remember? So that's our second number right here, 3.141, which was pi. Okay, that's going to be the second in order from least to greatest, so we can cross that off. Now, we are going to look at the two numbers remaining, okay, which again, it's 3.440, 3.4 repeating, okay? And when we compare place values, you can see that we have a 0 and we have a 4. So the one that's 0 is going to be the smaller number. So the next number when we order them is going to be 3.44. And finally, the largest number given in that set would be 3.4 repeating. Okay, so this would be our final answer right here. Okay, that would be the order from least to greatest. So why don't you go ahead and try the got it in part F, see if you can order those again from least to greatest, and then come back and see how you did. Okay, welcome back. I hope that you have completed this problem. The first thing that you needed to do was convert each of the numbers given into decimals. So 23% would be 0.23, 21 hundredths is already written as a decimal, 1/4 is 0.25, and 1/5 is 0.20. Then you need to order them, line up the decimal points, which I did right here. And since they all have a 2 in the tenths place, you're going to need to look at the hundredths place to do the comparison. So the smallest number in the hundredths place would be the 0. The largest number would be the 5. And then the 1 and the 3 would come next. So then when we actually list them in order from least to greatest, the smallest would be 0.20, which was 1/5. Okay, then second would be 0.21, which was listed in the original problem as just 21 hundredths already as a decimal. Okay, we've taken care of both of those. Next would be 0.23, which was 23%. And finally, 0.25, which was 1/4. So in order from least to greatest, it would be 1/5, 21 hundredths, 23%, and 1/4. Okay, and we have one final example that we're going to do in our notes today. It says, Nolan is the quarterback on the football team. He completed 67% of his passes in the first game. He completed 64 hundredths, 3/5 and 69% of his passes in the next 3 games. List his completed passing numbers from least to greatest. So again, this is going to be least to greatest. So just like we've done before, we need to write all these numbers as decimals. Writing a percent as a decimal is pretty easy. Okay, 67%, we would move our decimal point 2 spaces to the left, which would give us 67 hundredths, 0.67. Okay, so we've written that one. Then the next one is already written as a decimal, 0.64. 3/5, okay, that should be one that you guys maybe are starting to know by heart. 3/5 is the same as 0.6, okay? If you don't know that one, of course you can divide. We can put a 0 after that as well. Okay, 0.60. And finally, 69% written as a decimal would be 0.69. So let me grab my highlighter here. When we look at the tenths place, you will notice that that's not very helpful because we have a 6 there. So just like some of these other problems, we have to go ahead and look at the hundredths place to help us determine the order. So the smallest digit, let me go back to my pen. The smallest digit in the hundredths place is going to be the 0. Okay, so if we look back, 0.60, that was the 3/5. That's how we wrote 3/5 as a decimal. So the smallest is going to be 3/5. Again, let's cross it off so we know that it's taken care of. The next smallest number in the hundredths place is going to be the 4, so 0.64. That one, given in the original problem, was already written as a decimal. So we would just go ahead and write 0.64. Next would be 0.67, which was written in the problem as 67%. So we should write this as 67%. Done. And finally, the 0.69, which was 69%. Okay, and again, they have these listed as the answers right here. So from least to greatest, it would be 3/5, 0.64, 67%, and 69%. So again, when you're ordering fractions, decimals, and percents, the easiest thing to do is make sure all the numbers are written as a decimal. Once you have them written as a decimal, compare the decimal place, line up your decimal points, and compare from left to right. And that will help you order the numbers. Now, on the rest of your notes, there is this guided practice. We are not going to be completing that as part of our notes. So what you can do now is go ahead and complete the part 2 note check, and then you can go ahead and get started on your C step and get some practice on this. Thanks a lot.